Hello, this is Little Green Ghouls, and today I'm counting up the 10 best Goosebumps books. Now that I've finally worked my way through the original 62, I feel officially qualified to pass judgment. Doing the top 10 of anything is always a weird, subjective process, so I'm just trying to channel what the best of the Goosebumps books are to me, which is a mixture of goofy, some light scares, and often flat-out unhinged moments. I don't want to waste too much time on a preamble, so let's just jump into number 10, Werewolf Skin. Also, there are obviously going to be some spoilers ahead for all of these books, so turn back now if that bothers you. Werewolf Skin has the unfair advantage of featuring my favorite genre of horror movie monsters, werewolves, allowing it to squeak into the top 10. This book features our protagonist, Alex Hunter, who is staying with his elderly aunt and uncle for a few weeks in a small forest town of Wolf Creek. The residents of Wolf Creek are all werewolf obsessed, and for good reason. This book has nightly animal maulings and werewolf antics. This story gets bonus points for not skimping out on the werewolf action. Alex spends chapters in this book pursuing and being hunted by werewolves in various scenes that pull off some actual tension. This story also features a fun twist on the werewolf folklore. These werewolves shed their skins in the morning, and if someone burns that skin, the werewolf dies. This all culminates in a fairly obvious twist that Alex's aunt and uncle are actual werewolves terrorizing Wolf Creek, which we learn when Alex finds their discarded werewolf skins in an abandoned house next door. The ending is a bit weak, with Alex and his friend Hannah stealing the skins and wearing them for Halloween in order to keep them from his aunt and uncle, which all results in an anticlimactic curse-breaking scene. The final page twist of Hannah being a werewolf all along and potentially mauling Alex makes up for it a bit though. It's a fun Halloween-centric story that doesn't get enough recognition. Number 9, Stay Out of the Basement. This might upset some of you Goosebumps purists to see a classic so low, but there's stiff competition on this list. Margaret and Casey Brewer's mad scientist father is up to no good in the basement, and as is the case for many of these earlier books, Stein doesn't hold back on the scares. This entire book gives off unsettling vibes, and Dr. Brewer's temper paired with his increasingly bizarre behavior made me legit nervous for Margaret and Casey's safety. This book has some great scenes with some gross out horror involving a lunch of plant food, a bed full of earthworms, and some unsettling green blood. It's also one of the more violent books in the series. Dr. Brewer's experiments have resulted in an evil plant clone that has taken his place, and Margaret eventually has to decide which dad to kill in the book's climax. This was one that stuck with me as a kid because I fully expected Margaret to chop off her real dad's head in a final page twist. Lucky for him, she has the sense to stab each dad with a knife first to see who bleeds red. This ends with fake plant dad getting chopped fully in half Terrifier style, which felt a little aggressive to child me. It's a great story with some tense scenes as the kids creep around the basement and live in fear of their own father. There's a reason this book is so well known. Number 8, Vampire Breath. This book was one of the few I had clear memories loving as a kid, and also held up as an adult. Much like Werewolf Skin, I'm a sucker for fresh takes on the classic horror movie monsters, which Vampire Breath accomplishes. This story focuses on Freddy Martinez and his best buddy Kara, who are both remarkably violent children who find joy in constantly beating each other up. One of these beatdowns results in the destruction of an antique china cabinet, revealing a hidden door in the basement. As a kid, the idea of finding a hidden passage in the basement was enough to send my imagination racing, so when Freddy and Kara open the door and find a long tunnel to a room containing a single coffin, I was fully into it. The twist on this vampire story involves the titled bottle of vampire breath, which when opened releases toxic air and reveals an ancient vampire in the coffin. The logistics of this vampire breath get really sloppy, with it sending the children back in time, containing the vampire's powers and memories, and there being no explanation for how it's created or maintained. But it's easy to ignore all of this because at least a fun chase scenes in an ancient castle full of vampires. What's not to love? The surprise twist for this one has Freddy learning that after an entire book of thwarting vampires, he's a vampire himself, and he gets his very own set of fangs for his 13th birthday. It's a blend of horror adventure that even manages to squeeze in some time travel. It also avoids the dreaded plot padding that many of Stein's mid-series books can fall into. Number 7, Night of the Living Dummy. Despite Curly's removal as the mascot of the Goosebumps franchise, Slappy is not number 1 in my heart, and the book that features him the least is actually my favorite of the Night of the Living Dummy franchise. Mr. Wood is the true villain of the book, and he doesn't get the respect he deserves. At one point, he even vomits putrid green slime all over an entire auditorium of people. The book itself has some steep up and downs, with a solid chunk of it being a massive prank pulled off by a jealous twin that's a bit of a letdown, but it manages to redeem itself once Mr. Wood is officially brought to life with some magic words. Mr. Wood spends chapters beating the shit out of the twin protagonists, Lindy and Chris. This book also features 2 checked out parents who are negligent to a comical degree. At one point, the parents just stay in bed as Mr. Wood knocks these girls around the living room. The climax to this book is amazing. Mr. Wood is eventually lured in front of a steamroller where he's then smashed and releases a mushroom cloud of toxic smoke, simultaneously defeating the evil and traumatizing some poor construction worker who thinks he just flattened a kid. The big twist of this book is once the twins return home, they find Slappy sitting at the table with the iconic first words of, "Hey slaves, is that other guy gone? I thought he'd never leave." Night of the Living Dummy is notable for of course giving us Slappy and providing the blueprint for some sequels that, although aren't as solid as the first, they're still fun in their own way. Number 6. The Haunted School. This is a hidden gem of the series, tucked way back at number 59, where you might assume Stein would be losing some steam. This book features Tommy Frazier, the new kid at a massive old school with a dark history. The school itself is a labyrinth with ghostly voices whispering in empty classrooms, and a bizarre art exhibit featuring lifelike statues honoring an entire class of missing children. The story has a solid setup for a classic ghost story, but Stein flips the script and ends up sending Tommy and his friend Ben into a parallel universe through an abandoned elevator. In this new world, he finds the class of missing children living in a world without color, and we learn that they were the victims of an evil photographer who essentially banished them to life inside a black and white photo. This is all weird enough, but it gets weirder when we learn that the majority of this class of missing children have gone full on insane and now worship the darkness. This all culminates in Tommy and Ben being surrounded by this cult of demon children who proceed to guzzle a mysterious bubbling black liquid, which is noted to smell like dead animals. The cult kids get extra wild with this black goo, and there are endless pages of them spitting it all over each other while they shriek their praises to the darkness and prepare to boil Tommy and Ben. It's wild stuff, and something I never thought I'd find in a Goosebumps book. Tommy and Ben eventually escape the cult and the photo world through some chalk zone antics, only to find themselves face to face with the evil photographer in a final page twist. This book was one where Stein reminded the readers that he could actually put out a creepy story when he felt like it. Number 5. Welcome to Camp Nightmare. This was a book that had a great reputation, but was new to me because as a kid I skipped over all the camp stories since I had no connection to sleepaway camps and thought they'd be boring, but I learned throughout the series I was very wrong. Welcome to Camp Nightmare has a supremely wild twist ending, with the entire story being revealed to have taken place on an alien planet in preparation for a trip to Earth. That sounds like something that would be complete nonsense, but Stein actually makes it work in this case. Throughout the entire story, there are small clues that something isn't quite right about this camp and the world at large, with subtle descriptions of unfamiliar creatures and landscapes. All of this is easy to gloss over though with the events at Camp Nightmoon, where the kids are being picked off one by one like a classic camp slasher. Children are taken out by poisonous snakes, violent games, and a mysterious beast known as Saber, who stalks the campgrounds at night. All of this is made even more unsettling with the addition of camp leader Uncle Al, who could give two shits about the dwindling kids as he has a bit of a mean streak to him. This book culminates in our protagonist Billy being handed a rifle and commanded to hunt down some runaway campers. When Billy refuses to shoot the runaways and instead fires at Uncle Al, we learn this is all one big test and a satisfying twist. Stein would later try to replicate this kind of massive end of the book twist with diminishing returns, but Welcome to Camp Nightmare actually stuck the landing. Number 4. One Day at Horrorland. This book is stuffed with fun, creepy scenes, and you get the vibe that Stein had a blast writing it. The story focuses on Lizzie Morris and her little brother Luke and his friend Clay as a family vacation goes very wrong and they all end up in Horrorland. Horrorland is like a twisted version of Disney World full of classic rides with a dark side. We have the Horrorland horrors marching around spreading misery, lurking werewolves and vampires, and a swimming pool infested with alligators. Throughout their visit, the kids encounter places like an ever-shifting house of mirrors, where the mirrors and transparent walls are mixed together to create quite the mindfuck, and eventually it would lead to a scene where the mirrored walls start to squeeze in to crush the kids. Other rides include Doom Slide, that threatens to last for eternity and sends the kids through walls of flames. The other ride highlight is the Coffin Cruise, that seems designed to exploit someone's claustrophobia, where the family is tricked into a relaxing coffin river ride and then promptly sealed in a coffin full of spiders. The book's big twist is not only are the Horrorland horrors real, the family is actually competing on a monster game show for the horrors entertainment, where they all then race through obstacle courses and dodge death by various monsters. The ending twist with the horrors being defeated by a simple pinch is a slight letdown, but it's hard to hold it against such an otherwise creative and creepy story. Number 3. The Horror at Camp Jelly Jam. Remember how I said a key element of a good Goosebumps book is that it needs to be just a little bit unhinged? Well, Camp Jelly Jam goes above and beyond in this case. Camp Jelly Jam opens strong by launching our protagonists, Wendy and Elliot, down a mountainside in a detached RV where they rocket through the woods and come crashing into King Jelly Jam Sports Camp. This book feels like a personal nightmare where the kids and counselors at Camp Jelly Jam are all hyper-competitive sports freaks who make Wendy's life miserable. The majority of this book again has some classic camp slasher vibes to it, with the kids all going missing every few chapters, but when the twist is revealed, shit really hits the fan. Towards the end of the book, Wendy stumbles across Camp Jelly Jam's secret, the counselors are all been hypnotized, and the missing children have been enslaved to serve a disgusting purple slime monster living in the caves beneath the camp. Stein goes all out on King Jelly Jam, who is described as smelling as hot garbage, burned rubber, rotten meat, and spoiled milk all mixed into one. King Jellyjam himself is a giant heap of purple goop, leaking white goo from his nostrils with watery yellow eyes and dripping in slugs. The captured kids are forced to scrub and wash King Jellyjam 24/7, and once they stop, they are promptly eaten. Wendy is able to lead a revolt to stop the kids from scrubbing, causing King Jellyjam to succumb to his own stench and die as a result. The whole last fourth of this book is a great time and went places I never expected it to go. I was legit surprised by this one and loved how twisted it was. It was a great lesson in never judge a book by its cover. Number 2, How to Kill a Monster. This is probably my most controversial choice because this book doesn't appear to be nearly as beloved as it is for me. I just really love its simple, goofy premise with 2 kids sealed in a house with an actual swamp monster. In this book, we have Gretchen and her stepbrother Clark, who are trapped at their grandparents' creepy swamp mansion for a few weeks. The setting is great with all the classics of a stinky, bubbling swamp surrounding them. It takes a bit to get started, but once Gretchen and Clark stumble across the swamp monster locked in an upstairs bedroom, shit gets wild. The monster proceeds to stalk them through the house, and the kids are subjected to one of the most batshit and inept Goosebumps adult twists. The grandparents have nailed the door shut, sealing the kids in the house with the monster, while the grandparents go to get help. It makes zero sense, but I love it anyways. We have chapters and chapters of monster action, with Gretchen and Clark finding various ways to knock the monster out, including feeding it some poisoned pies full of various household cleaners. It's another one that doesn't quite stick the landing, with the swamp monster licking Gretchen, speaking English, and revealing it's actually allergic to humans before falling over dead. The last page twist has a bit of dark fun though, with Gretchen and Clark wandering off into the swamp, only to be surrounded by swamp monsters with no chance of escape. It's one I don't hear praised often, but it was a childhood favorite that held up for me. Number 1, The Haunted Mask. Is this a cliche and common top pick? Probably, but it's for good reason. The Haunted Mask is one of Stein's best original creations, and it has a protagonist with some actual personality, who isn't just the usual blank slate for a kid to project onto. Carly Beth spends a portion of this book being tormented by her classmates, and at one point is even tricked into eating an actual earthworm. She's tired of being known as a fraidy cat and commits to finding the scariest mask possible for Halloween. She gets her wish when she comes across a grotesque mask in a forbidden back room of a costume shop. I've neglected to mention the covers in this list so far because I've been focusing on the actual stories, but the mask featured is excellent and adds to the excitement of the story. When Carly Beth gets home and tries on the mask, she notes that it's weirdly warm and surprisingly tight. It also transforms her voice into a demonic growl. She terrifies her younger brother, but then struggles to get the mask off. This already had my claustrophobia on edge. Eventually she gets it off, but she doesn't learn her lesson because on Halloween night she puts it back on and spends the evening scaring the shit out of everyone. The mask seems to bring out the dark side of Carly Beth, and in a highlight of the night, she comes across a woman and has thoughts like, I'm gonna tear this woman apart, I'll chew her to bits, and I'll tear the skin off her bones. This book is just a great time watching Carly Beth become progressively feral, and when Carly Beth attempts to take the mask off at the end of the night, we get another great scene when she looks in the mirror and starts shrieking how her reflection no longer has her own eyes because she's nearly full-on possessed. The ending does a decent enough job of tying it all together and giving a satisfying twist with her younger brother Noah slipping it on. It's just a great story with an original concept that I can see why it has become such a classic of the series. Well, that's it for my top 10. Let me know in the comments your Goosebumps rankings. Are there any you flat out disagree with? I've just enjoyed this whole process and love the excuse to revisit some childhood memories. Anyways, as always, thanks again for watching and make sure you subscribe for
the pride, the love,